Good morning, and I guess good evening to everybody that's joining Oroco's third town hall of 2025. I'm sitting here in Vancouver with Mike Leahy. My name is Craig Dalziel. I'm the chairman of Oroco. In choice, we have our president, Ian Graham, as well as Ubaldo Treviso, who's a project partner, as well as our very trusted and capable partner with respect to our operations in choice. Today, I think it's important that two subject matters basically be addressed. One is quite important for everybody to understand, and that is the initiatives that we have taken with respect to how we position the entity known currently as Sociedad Gold, but is being rebranded as Santo Tomas Cobre. This is the operating subsidiary in which Oroco has invested over $40 million US over the last 3 to 4 years. We have determined that the market sentiment generally, with respect to Oroco's share price, for a number of reasons, some of which I think we can responsibly identify, but nonetheless exist, and that is we've languished essentially at price levels that I think basically everybody that's joined us today would agree is well below what should be reasonably representative of the value of Oroco and the value of the Santo Tomas project. For this reason, we are rebranding our subsidiary, as I said, as Santo Tomas Cobre, for the very specific reason that it allows us to utilize standards other than the Oroco share price in determining an appropriate investment level by which we could attract investment directly into that subsidiary. Now, under that circumstance, I think you can all do the math. If we can talk about a baseline investment level in that entity of $150 million US, which of course I gave you a preview of in our September town hall, then I think you would appreciate, given the fact that Sociedad Gold or Santo Tomas Cobre owns 91.4% of the project, you can start to appreciate the significant delta that exists between the Oroco share price today and that which we're suggesting is a baseline valuation for future investment that's taken directly into Santo Tomas Cobre. We're doing this for a reason that it allows us a second avenue of fundraising. It does not preclude any fundraising that may occur within Oroco, and this would become essentially supplementary to the overall advancement of the project. So all of this goes back to a statement I think that I made as well in the September town hall, and that is that I saw the Mexican investment community as being ultimately our most likely strategic partner. And I said that for a very specific reason, and that is that the people of Mexico that have a familiarity with projects like Santo Tomas, or more specifically, do have a familiarity with Santo Tomas itself, are much more supportive of the project and more familiar with all of those influences that are involved in seeing a project like this through to a successful outcome than perhaps the international investment community is. And I think that statement is backed up quite specifically by our current Oroco share price. The bottom line is there is a hard and fast value here in terms of the Santo Tomas project that is clearly outside the periphery of the view of most investors today, as it relates to Oroco. And so we are specifically looking for avenues that we can use to raise capital on a basis that comes from a much more specific yardstick or measurement of value, something that is much more reflective of the value of Santo Tomas than we're seeing with our Oroco share price. So, as this rebranding process continues, we will keep you updated as to exactly what that represents, what stage that process is at. But I can tell you today that right now we're in the process of preparing a prospectus for Santo Tomas Cobre, which will be utilized in the near term, perhaps as early as January of next year, to provide a secondary source of funding overall for the project. So that's the first thing I wanted to specifically reference. Now, the second major issue, of course, relates to where we are today and what we can do to finance the company going forward. There's been a number of questions regarding the plans and intentions of the company with respect to financing, and I think it's reasonable to state that the biggest obstacle that we currently face as a viable entity, and I'm talking about Oroco, is the ability to finance, and I don't think there's any argument with that one. The bottom line is we've struggled for some time just to essentially make ends meet, so to speak. But fortunately, in the process of regenerating the opportunity, and we can get into all that detail in terms of what I mean by that, but in terms of regenerating and strengthening the opportunity associated with Oroco over the last year plus, we've diluted the company by a total of 8%. And I do honestly believe that the overall value of the entity, specifically as it relates to Santo Tomas, has increased dramatically to a level that is significantly beyond that 8% number. So in other words, as difficult as it has been for many shareholders to accept the delays, the simple fact is that the project, and therefore the value of the company Oroco, has appreciated that much more in the timeframes that we've been discussing. During that time frame, I think everybody has come to realize that there were a number of headwinds that we've had to deal with that I now believe have been dealt with effectively. The big one being the regulatory environment in Mexico. The bottom line is, through the assistance of a number of key people, and I'll name two of them very specifically, Mario Zamora and Faisal Rodriguez, we've been able to I think, restore certainty as to the pathway forward for Oroco as a prospective open pit mining operation. So in accomplishing that, of course, it's taken a lot of time. It's taken a lot of work behind the scenes, none of which can be measured at any particular point. It's very difficult to assign a value or a particular achievement within that context. But the bottom line is we've been able to now, I think, create a solid foundation for this project going forward. So the big question then goes back to what I referenced a few minutes ago, and that is the ability to finance Oroco in a manner which is certainly it respects the needs of the individual shareholders that exist today in terms of protecting their interests and therefore minimizing dilution as best we can. And of course, that's part of the strategy associated with Santo Tomas Cobre. But in the interim, we're talking about Oroco, and the fact is that we've had a close relationship with Canaccord Genuity for some time now, thanks to the work done by Ian Graham and Mike Leahy. And we feel that relationship will mature very quickly, early in the new year, such that we can do a financing in Oroco. The target number at this point in time is $8 to $10 million, sufficient to allow us to regenerate the activity on site in terms of, more specifically, the phase 2 drill program. which will essentially kick off the second phase of development at Santo Tomas. All of which will lead to a PFS, which from a timing perspective, we were hoping could be completed by the end of 2026. But realistically, now I think we're looking at end of first quarter 2027, assuming that we can put together sufficient funding in early 2026 to allow us to commence very soon thereafter the phase 2 drill program. So generally speaking, that's where we are. I'd like to summarize essentially, and I've got a list of questions that many people have put forward over the last few days. And the last one on this list is, how confident is management that Santo Tomas will ultimately become a producing copper mine? And I think that question hits at the heart of this whole exercise. The bottom line is, when I first got involved in this project, it was at the a recommendation of a fellow by the name of Ken Thorson, who's an extraordinary, he's a legend in Canadian mining circles. He's an exceptional geologist. He ran Teck Corporation's exploration arm for a number of years. Excuse me. And is just a very astute individual who gave me a very specific recommendation as to why we should be pursuing, why Oroco should pursue Santo Tomas. This was in 2009. It took me 2 years thereafter to convince the board that it was worth pursuing, and it wasn't until 2015 that we're actually in a position where the legal issues that were involved in that acquisition could actually be identified in terms of a specific pathway through to the title that we ultimately realized in 2019. Soon thereafter, Ian Graham introduced a very important individual to me, and that individual is Richard Locke. And Richard Locke, after spending sufficient time to convince himself this project was worth pursuing, and I think I can honestly say that Richard was contemplating at least semi-retirement at that point in time. What got his attention were a number of factors, most particularly the ease with which the project could be developed. And after assessing it for his own purposes as to whether it was of sufficient merit to get for his own involvement, he made a simple statement to me. And that is, Craig, Santo Tomas will be a mine. And that to me is the summary statement that supersedes all else that people can basically conclude in terms of assessing the merits of this project and its potential. Have we now put it back on track after experiencing over the last year and a half or close to 2 years now a relatively let's put it this way, a resurrection, first off, a realization of the issues that existed and the depth and complications of those issues, and then subsequently the generation of solutions and the implementation of key relationships that now allow us to proceed in a manner which puts us back on track with Richard Locke's assessment of the merits of this project. So, from my perspective, I don't think there's anybody else that can possibly suggest that two greater sources of quality expertise could be found in the industry than those two gentlemen. And the fact is further that we continue to have those opinions reinforced in one form or another. So from my perspective, I'm very optimistic as to where we're going with this project. The biggest question is time. As I said earlier, the financing is necessary to regenerate the exploration activity on the project. That's clear, but we're going to make a decision. Whereas previously the pendulum swung more to the side of the equation that favored the best interest of the shareholders in the context of a project that was quite uncertain as to when it could be put back on track. But now the fact is that we're on track, and I believe that the pendulum has swung to the other side, and now we have to finance in whatever form is necessary to basically get on with the job. So there we are. That's the today in a summary. Um, and now I'm, ready for us to open up the floor to questions from the shareholders.
And we do have some questions. And again, if anyone has questions, please put them in the webinar chat or the Q&A, and we're happy to answer anything. First question that's come in is, how does the rebranding/funding through Santo Tomas Cobre affect existing Oroco shareholders?
I have no doubt that it benefits the shareholders in the fact that we're going to be using essentially a valuation standard in Santo Tomas Cobre that is much higher on a relative basis to that which shareholders in Oroco are experiencing today with respect to the current share price. I hope that that's a sufficient response.
What are short-term and long-term goals, and how does the PFS timeline fit with those goals?
Well, our immediate goal, of course, is to fund the company such that we can commence the phase two drill program ASAP. Um, People have asked the question over the last year or so as to how it is that we are spending our money, etc. There's been a large portion of the funding that has been generated that's been applied to the maintenance of the project itself in terms of concession fees and the like. And there's an ongoing obligation there with respect to security issues, with respect to key personnel that we've had to keep involved, because of course we didn't want to lose certain people that were very, very important to us. So with the Ubaldo's help, we've been able to reassign people to other related tasks, etc. But the bottom line is we're at a point where uh, the, there is no choice other now than now to proceed with the financing that I've just referenced, but I can't be specific about because, of course, it hasn't been anything has not been negotiated yet specifically with Canaccord Genuity or any other party. And I think I got off track there. That response.
It's okay. Next question.
Something I do quite frequently, by the way. My wandering brain.
Please explain the permitting progress for Santo Tomas and the project's tie into Plan Mexico.
Ian, I think you're best in that sense
Yeah.
to answer this question.
Certainly. So first step, we're fully permitted through the end of phase two to do all feasibility studies so we can move at the pace funding allows. That's first. Subsequent permitting will follow standard permitting for operating mines in Mexico. And we have been placed on Plan Sinaloa, Plan Mexico, which is the federal president's, let's call it the president's list of favored projects for development across 14 hubs in Mexico. We're attached to the Topolobampo hub for Northern Sinaloa economic development. And we have full support, direct access to the minister, the Secretary of the Economy, think Minister of Finance, for direct support through the permitting process. And so essentially we have been told there are no headwinds to our progress. We simply have to step through the permitting hurdles as have been established in Mexico for a long time. So essentially we no longer have the specter of permitting not progressing. That has been removed for the Santo Tomas project specifically. So it's all systems go to now advance the project steadily through the phase two steps to a feasibility study of either a pre-feasibility or feasibility level. And essentially what we need to do to qualify the resource for pre-feasibility is bring South Zone into the indicated category. Currently, it's an inferred resource. We need to raise that, hence the need for some drilling. So I'm down in Choix at the moment. I'm here for two purposes. One, to join the team this evening with our float parade through town, which is an annual event and one of our social contributions. And two, to sit with the team to complete the scoping of drilling for a pre-feasibility study that includes geotech and resource. So yeah, sorry that was fairly long, but we now believe all headwinds to getting permitted through development for Santo Tomas have been dealt with.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Before I got lost in my train of thought earlier, the reason I was mentioning the expenses that we've been incurring over the last year and a half or so, while we've essentially remained inactive from a project development perspective, I'm talking about physically, from a physical project development perspective, is we are, as a result of keeping certain key people in place, maintaining the project as we have with the security and et cetera, we can essentially start up in a relatively short period of time. Is that a fair statement, Ian?
Yes.
Yeah, and that means that really the only question right now is how quickly we can put together the finance necessary to kick off the phase two development or exploration program.
You mentioned that you're targeting a raise of 8 to 10 million in the new year. Will that be sufficient to get you to completion of the PFS?
No.
And what is the target completion date?
So the $8 to $10 million number is rationalized as a number sufficient to again regenerate the drill program at Santo Tomas. It's not nearly enough to finish the project. The anticipation is that once that activity starts, that our market will start to react. People will realize that we are moving forward again. And then we would move to complete a second level of financing, hopefully at improved prices, which would allow us to complete the PFS program. Bottom line is we require somewhere in the range of 25 million to do that. Of course, the 8 to 10 million just gets us started.
Has there been any news on Whittle?
Shall
Yeah,
I take that one,
yeah.
Craig, to begin, and you can finish it? There has been very significant progress with Whittle. I see that on the joining us is one of the Whittle representatives, Raziel. What has happened at Whittle is we have substantially expanded the scope of what we're doing there, and recall that that study is a strategic optimization study looking at opportunities based on the PEA to improve the value of the project and to help us scope the pre-feasibility study to capture that value. And so it's been a significant piece of work. It is ongoing because the scope was expanded, and we are seeing some very significant touch points in the project scope that will allow us to improve the value of the project through the pre-feasibility study. So incredibly valuable work. It's perhaps one of the really high leverage things we have done through this period that's otherwise been quiet, to prepare ourselves for maximizing the scope of the pre-feasibility study. So we're very excited with how that's going. And Craig, you may want to touch on some of the specifics. Clearly, it's still a work in progress, guys. So, we haven't finished it, but the things that the Whittle team have been working on and their exploration of areas to liberate value have been very exciting. We meet weekly, and the progress has been steady and really quite compelling.
So of course, as I think everybody understands, there are regulatory requirements here in Canada with respect to the release of technical information. Every report that's prepared has to be of a 43-101 reporting standard. At this point in time, the Whittle study does not meet that requirement, and therefore we've been unable to publicize the updated NPV numbers related to that study. Unfortunately, we, Oroco specifically, can't be the entity that allows those numbers to be publicized. Uh, I'm understanding that Santo Tomas Cobre has a different perspective on things, but from an Oroco perspective, we are technically precluded from releasing the numbers of that study. I'm sorry to say, today. Now, we're working to find avenues by which those results can be publicized.
I think as well, Craig, the real focus for us as a team is to capture those opportunities into a PFS, which will daylight the full value of the Santo Tomas project.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that Whittle has absolutely certainly confirmed the value that we see at Santo Tomas. There's no question about it. I'll say that regardless of whether I should be saying it or not. Bottom line is we're very, very satisfied with what we've seen from them in terms of the results, their approach, the numbers that were generated, the valuations that they've concluded exist there, and they've used an international standard evaluation process to basically give us estimates as to the reasonableness or the accuracy of their numbers, because that was one of the questions that I specifically posed of them. They've given us a number, and I said, well, how accurate is that? And they've given us the standards by which that number is judged in terms of its reasonable accuracy, and all of which falls into a range of value that is well in excess of any number that's been published to date with respect to the value of Santo Tomas. So we're very comfortable that not only has Whittle got not only are they clearly enthusiastic themselves with their involvement with the project because of the quality of the project, but what we're seeing is they have a degree of enlightenment and or perception or whatever word you want to use to describe an extra sense of the value associated with this project that I think is going to be clearly determined over the next number of months. And the guidance that they will help provide to the ultimate PFS process, I think will be invaluable as well. Is that a fair statement, Ian?
Entirely. I mean, a
Yeah.
large part of the scope of what we're going to do is being informed by the work that they're doing. The trade-offs we'll focus on, the various scopes are all coming from where they see opportunity to improve the value on the project. So it's been fantastic process for us, both fun, enjoyable, stimulating professionally, and very informative. So yeah, it's excellent, really.
Okay. It is great to see Faisal Rodriguez join the company's board. What are the top 3 things that Faisal will be focused on for Oroco?
So a particular shareholder asked me that question, I think a couple of days ago, and my response was simply the following. Those 3 things are permitting, permitting, and permitting. That more than anything else is what we've asked of Faisal, and it's what he's demonstrated to be capable of in terms of guiding us through that process, and that's his primary mandate. We can add, of course, that he's validated his commitment to the project in a secondary manner, and that involved his participation in the last financing that we did. by way of a substantial personal investment. That investment is I believe, recorded online. I think you can find that filing, associated filing on CEDAR, if you need to know the precise number. But he's a tremendous asset, and we see him as being integral to the permitting process, which is fundamentally the most important administrative aspect to this project.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, Craig, Faisal worked at El Sosal, which was the last large operating mine, 30 kilometers east of Santo Tomas. He's also from town here, from Choix, has a very, very personal motivation to see Santo Tomas advance, and to make the contributions in the neighborhood that the operation would make. So it just broadens our support. And in addition, Faisal just has direct operating experience in Mexico in the current environment. So he's been a huge add. He brings a lovely demeanor to everything we're doing. He's very upbeat, very, very positive, and very, very calm. And it's brought a lot to our team to have him join us. So it's been a real, I guess we're privileged actually to
Most
have
definitely.
him join us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a bit of a follow-on. How is the company preparing for environmental permit requirements specific to water, tailings, and reclamation?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So first, we fully mapped all the permits that would be required for an operating mine. And then that brings us back to all the input studies, baseline, etc., that would be required to go through permitting. So for items, for example, tailings, we need a pre-feasibility, feasibility study, level of study in order to know what the tailings eventuality will be in order to get it permitted. So it really is, we fully mapped the process, but we now need to do the feasibility level work so that we can prepare the permitting inputs and to describe what will be done in order to permit it.
Two questions. Under current market conditions, when would you estimate a sale on exit of Oroco? And what is your conservative price per Oroco share on such a sale after allowing for all future capital raises, dilution, etc.?
I don't want to touch that question.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, quite obviously, there's a value to this project that ultimately would translate through a sale price to a share value in Oroco that is significantly higher than where we are today. That this is why I go to the fundamental question or fundamental statement made by Richard Locke. This will be a mine. And if you start talking about a 1 billion ton copper porphyry project with this type of infrastructure support, etc., it's pretty easy to start to attach zeros to the value of this project. Bottom line is that will directly translate to a share price at some point in time that will be extremely favorable to anybody that's a shareholder, certainly at any number within range of where our current price is today. The timeline, I think too often we've heard the statement 2 years. I think that statement has been made for quite a number of years. I can give you reasons why at certain points it was actually thought that that was possible. However, one thing that we clearly did not understand was the regulatory environment that existed in Mexico and how that influenced the permitting process. And that influence has been in place for more than the last year and a half or so. It goes well back into the presidency of Mr. Obrador, and It was not evident by way of any formal law change or the like. It was purely an understanding amongst the senior bureaucratic influences that recognized Mr. Obrador's intentions. And the bottom line is there was a stagnation there that has caused our timelines to continuously shift. Today, I'd use therefore the same statement that was made 2 or 3 years ago. And that is, I think it's reasonable to expect with the PFS in place by certainly, I would hope no later than mid 2027, that this project would be ripe for sale at that point in time. Any sale activity that would happen thereafter is obviously going to take a number of months. So minimally speaking, I think we're talking about 2 years plus.
And also thank you, Raziel, who provided a much shorter and I might say better answer, which is quote unquote mucho dinero.
That's a good one.
He's also asked, can you discuss the energy and logistical advantages Santo Tomas has as compared to more remote copper projects in the high Andes and such? This goes towards buildability.
I've never been to the high Andes, Ian, so I'm going to leave this one to you.
Okay. So 2 items. Yeah, great infrastructure. The key in the infrastructure is we have a high pressure natural gas line running proximal to the project with excess gas capacity. So if you reference the PEA, we used a standalone gas generation facility off-site, but proximal to the project, supplying well-priced power into the project, in addition to the option of taking power off the national grid, which has hydropower generation also proximal to the project. So we've got great energy opportunities. We could use mixed fuel truck fleet, for example, also utilizing the natural gas. And we're at low elevation. The base of the pits will be slightly above sea level late in developments, and the maximum elevation on the site's 1,000 meters. So low elevation, easy access on infrastructure with an excess capacity port 100 miles, 160 kilometers from the project. So just an exceptional location and the ability to source very, very low price energy right at the project gate. So just, yeah, remarkably fortuitous location.
How is the community and political support holding up, and have there been any changes since the last update?
So maybe I'll kick that off, and then I'll ask Don Ubaldo maybe to comment on that. Short answer, no change. The community is most anxious that we boot up and go, and that's really what we need to do is get going in order to maintain the support, and also reward the confidence that the community, from the local through state all the way to the federal Secretary of the Economy. I think the way we show our gratitude for that support is to finance and get going. And Ubaldo, would you like to speak to just the local support and your experience with?
Yeah, we've been tremendously supported on this project, and they're all expecting this because this is their only hope. We've been knocking doors for the last 3 or 4 years. Now they're pushing us. Even the government, the institution are pushing us to start. So yes, we are supported.
Yeah, and we keep that support by returning and get going, right? Demonstrate our commitment to the support we've received, which has been really, folks, really superb. I'm getting on a bit now, and I've been in this industry for 30 years advancing projects, and I have never been part of a project with such unilateral domestic support for a project. When I'm at the gas station, The ladies there who used to drive truck for Faisal Rodriguez at El Social asked me in jest, partially, when they're getting their high-paying truck driving jobs back at Santo Tomas. And so we're really finding ourselves in a situation where we need to demonstrate that we're back in the saddle and driving this project forward, and no blinking. We just have to go now.
Where would the workforce come from? How far are the local communities?
Shall I have a crack at that?
Yeah, please.
So the local communities, none of them are right on the project site, which is great. We're not going to displace anyone, and we have surface agreements to proceed with the project. After that, the closest communities are just several kilometers away, and Choix is basically 25 kilometers away. And so most of the project operations personnel will be based in their hometowns and in the city of Choix. So it's an ideal situation with respect to staffing the project. Through construction, there'll be a number of people brought in from remote. That is just the nature of construction. But when this project is in operation, by far and away, the majority of personnel will just be hired out of the community. As I said earlier, there was an operating mine here, operated by Goldcorp to a very high standard, and they began, in effect, the training of a mining-friendly populace in the region. So we are much blessed by having a large pool of people available to staff this project. It's another one of the locational advantages of Santo Tomas, really quite remarkable.
In the most recent Mexico-only raise, I think management was looking to raise more capital. What happened? Was it a lack of interest?
So this may be one of my favorite topics. We tried to be clear when we initiated that financing that it was specifically targeted toward individuals who we wanted to see involved in the project, most specifically Faisal Rodriguez, and others that we knew to have an interest for one reason or another in the advancement of the project. We tried to make it very clear that this financing was limited to persons whom we invited to participate. That list was very short. It was, I think, 6 or 7 individuals, all but 2. Everybody that was asked to participate expressed an interest and wanted to participate. As it turned out, 2 of those individuals were unable to participate for their own reasons. Perhaps it was just being unable to put together a substantial sum of money, which those 2 individuals both committed to in the timeframes that were necessary. But the bottom line is there was no attempt whatsoever to open this financing up to just any individual. It was people that were specifically asked to participate. As I said, it was just a handful of people. The only reason that we cited $2 million to $3 million US was because that was generally the range. The early commitments were slightly over $3 million. And when we lost those 2 individuals, as the 2 that were unable to proceed quickly enough, we settled at $2.1 million. This was not a question of not being able to raise any more. We had all sorts of requests to participate in that financing beyond the individuals that we'd invited to participate. As a matter of fact, we had a case where one individual, I can give you his name, but I don't want to embarrass him any more than I have recently by nature of the rather heated exchanges we've had on the subject. But the bottom line is he offered us $150,000 to participate as an indication of his interest in participating. We told him that this financing was restricted to to individuals whom we had identified as being potentially beneficial as participants in the project. And I think we've now exceeded, I think I've received over 60 emails from him subsequently. I could read you the last one, but it's a progression of absolute outright madness. I don't think this person is well any longer. I'm serious. This was such an issue for him that he couldn't participate, that he's turned into an absolutely obsessed critic of the company. And I'm just sorry that we weren't clear enough at the beginning that this financing was specifically directed towards people that we invited to participate. There was no thought of opening it up whatsoever to whatever, whomever expressed an interest. So it's become a rather heated topic in certain respects because people were felt excluded. Longtime shareholders certainly fell into this category. We had this one exceptional case, as I said, which became somewhat of a mad scenario. But otherwise, I think everybody ultimately understood the nature of the financing. But unfortunately, there was this perception that we'd fallen short of the mark, etc., which is not the case at all.
Is there any update on the study to divert the river?
Well, that was part of what Whittle was going to give us a sort of an elevated view on as a part of their current study, but they just have not gotten to that yet. Is that basically it's where we are or not? Is it not, Ian?
That's correct.
They haven't been able to get to it yet.
Just to give it, just to give us a sense. I think the reality, though, is we'll understand the economic opportunity there, but it will be, permitting and the long run development of the project is where the full value of that might be captured. The key here is we have just, even within the scope of the PEA level study that we did, excluding that opportunity, we have a very compelling and very competitive project. A project that will be developed, and we're getting expressions of support for an expanded project from regulators and politicians, but that remains to be seen. The simple fact is this is a large resource, multi-decadal, generational mining opportunity.
How does the new global push for secure copper supply, US, Canada, Mexico trilateral alignment, impact project attractiveness?
Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah. Well, all of these things are going to help the project. There is no doubt that there is, increasing interest in the project, and interest coming from sources, US, Canada, Mexico, to see what can be done to help support the project advancement. And the key is we get into PFS and feasibility studies and show that we're moving forward. The macro environment is as good as it's been in my professional time in mining. And so we need to seize the day and move forward. I think that's the key. That's the message. Let's regain our mojo and drive forward on this project. That is the key to providing the value and the future to Oroco, our shareholders, and the communities that are supporting us down here in Mexico.
Will insiders be participating in the upcoming financing?
I don't think that's been discussed or considered yet. I think there's always that opportunity. I have to say, this takes me back to the financing that was done in February. I was criticized by some for participating in the financing, and one individual even accused me of manipulating the market so that the price was low enough that it was that much more appealing for me personally. But the reality was my participation was purely a share swap, which meant that because of the timing of the financing and the struggles that we were experiencing at that point in time, it was very difficult to conclude that financing. So we had to do a swap whereby I had to sell a substantial portion of my free trading shares and then take that money immediately and put it back into the company as part of the private placement. So therefore, I traded my free trading stock for restricted shares, and then had to give up as part of the agreement on that swap, give up the warrants back, assign them back to the participants that purchased the stock from me in the first place. So I personally, I don't know how many times I've participated in the financings. I'll probably find a way to participate in this next one. I think there'll likely be others. But this is something that we've never asked of our board in the sense that we don't expect any of our board members necessarily to be participants in these financings. And I know that there's expectations at times for the need. Well, there's a need for some to see the insiders participating in these financings. What we've found here in the last couple of years is that if we do participate in these financings, particularly at the level that we've been forced to undertake them, that we open ourselves up for criticism in the context of a sense of us taking advantage of a share price that is being depressed by our own inaction, which I don't believe could be much further from the truth. The bottom line is twofold. Number one, we continue to support this company in a number of ways. We've had our fingers burned somewhat by participating in prior lower priced financings in the context of the optics associated with that action. The bottom line is, and this is a very important part of the issue of insider contribution. The fact is that and I'll give you some specific examples. I've drawn a grand total of $4,500 in fees so far in 2025. That's the same number that existed in September. Richard Locke has not taken a dime from the company since February. Ian Graham is on a cut salary. Mike Leahy's on a cut salary. So are the senior people in Mexico. This has been a remarkable circumstance where so much personal sacrifice has occurred, yet we have not lost a single individual. And I think that is a great yardstick by which the commitment to this company can be measured. And I think it says a lot about essentially the overall commitment of the individuals involved.
Any update on the Baharachi project?
I know that there's. I was recently notified that and just so you understand, our intermediary in this process is a fellow by the name of Ren Hong, who used to be the president of Xinjiang Mining. So he left Xinjiang because of his frustration with the existing decision makers with respect to their policies around the disposition of Baharachi. And he's been subsequently working with us, trying to find a way to accomplish what he saw as the only realistic avenue for the sale of Baharachi, or at least the advancement of Baharachi as a production opportunity. And that is by way of a working arrangement with the owners of Santo Tomas. We've been exchanging proposals over the years. Only of late have we seemed to really get anybody's serious attention. I'm talking about at the Jinjuan decision-making level. And as of late, they are now committing to doing an appraisal of the value of Baharachi so that there's more meaning brought to the discussions about how that value can be integrated into whatever plan we may be putting forth with respect to a joint effort involving Santo Tomas. So progress is evident, but it's a very slow and very tedious process. But in the meantime, I still believe, as do the others involved in this process, that Baharachi, realistically, if it's to be developed, there's only one realistic way that that can occur, and that's somehow in conjunction with the development of Santo Tomas. So we keep pushing.
Are there any plans for Vinea in 2026? And if so, what are they?
Ian?
Absolutely, yes. We will be doing more surface sampling. We've commenced that process, so we have some sampling, mapping. We're looking at some geophysics with a view to drill testing in a small program fairly early next year. So obviously we need to raise some finance, dedicate a small amount of that budget to Vinea to test some very compelling projects.
Any renewed excitement around the Brasilia zone?
No, it's not been a subject matter of late.
No.
Not at all.
What is the single most important catalyst investors should expect next?
Financing sufficient to commence the phase 2 drill program as early as possible. That's bottom line. That's the catalyst.
And that seems to be the questions.
Yeah, I'm just looking
Excellent.
at some of the other ones that we had recently. Has there been one of the questions is, has there been any progress with a strategic investor? As recently as yesterday, Richard and I had a quick discussion about this. There's nothing of note, but I think it's also important to address one other subject that we haven't really touched on today, and that is part of the process associated with the solicitation of investment into Oroco. What has surfaced quite consistently over the last while is a concern as to security issues in Sinaloa. And I'm now going to ask Ian and Ubaldo to discuss this matter more specifically, because it is very clear, and we know this from some of the feedback we've gotten from Canaccord to date, that there is a general concern amongst the international investment community that security issues exist with respect to this project, and of course the influences that may exist on it in the future with respect to the presence of the cartels. I have my own feelings about this. I don't see the sense of that in any way, shape, or form. I really don't. To me, the cartels are not the issue. There's always going to be subsets of sorts. There's going to be criminal elements, as there are in any community, that may try to influence us from a perspective of personal harassment or the like. But in terms of a general impediment to the advancement of the project, I don't see that at all. Now, please, Ian, you and Ubaldo can expand on that statement.
Certainly. So being on the ground here and in Choix, I think, and at the official levels, city, state, etc., the desire to see a major capital project develop is actually in part to further stabilize northern Sinaloa. And the reason that the federal government focused on northern Sinaloa and the state government for Plan Sinaloa is that it's regarded as the more stable part of the state and more readily securitized, in part because of the La Entrada El Pacifico trade route developed adjacent to the project. So I'm on the ground here now, came in last night. Security in our part of Sinaloa is good, and manageable through our on the ground resources, led directly by Ubaldo. There are other major Canadian mining companies active here in Sinaloa, not least Vizsla Silver, and they're managing their circumstance and barreling forward and getting excellent market support. So I think in general, capital projects can advance quite safely with the proper attention here in Sinaloa. And I'm like you, Craig. I have a personal disposition on this, and it is that we can operate quite safely and quite constructively, just paying attention to the environment day to day. Ubaldo, have you?
Being part of this community, it's just very, very safe. I have my family down here. I brought my son and his family down here. It's safe. We don't have no problem. We respect each other very much. So we're fine.
I think the problem is just one of perception. The reality doesn't really exist. It's
No.
you hear about the odd incident here and there in other parts of Mexico. But it's an unfortunate aspect to this, and I think it's just something that we need to continue to reinforce, and that is how comfortable we are working in that environment.
Correct.
I can
Yep.
see more violence in LA and United States because they shoot on the streets. Down here we're safe. We're fine.
That's right. That's right. It's just purely perception.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say there are events, but
Absolutely,
we're
yes.
in an environment where we manage our activities quite carefully, but otherwise live normally.
No.
Very good.
Okay, we've I guess been an hour, so thanks. We've had good attendance.
Very good.
How many people signed up,
73.
participated, and there were 130 or so that actually signed up?
129 registered, and we had 74 join.
Well, hopefully we've answered everybody's questions. I'm just going to go back in summary to the one challenge that I think does keep us up at night, and that is the need to get this company finance sufficient to commence the phase 2 drill program. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. That's our challenge. Obviously, from an equity perspective, what we're trying to do is ensure that obviously the market will dictate the price, but what we're what we're in favor of essentially, and we see some communication on this with Canaccord in respect to our discussions to date with the managing director of Mine Finance, who's just a great supporter of this project. We've had discussions about the parameters of the financing, and part of the discussion has involved a potential option of a non-warrant financing, which I think the shareholders of Oroco would find very appealing overall. So it's unfortunate that our market is not assisting this process as we would otherwise hope that it would and that it should. We've tried on numerous occasions to explain the many reasons as to why we see this that our stock price has languished over the last couple of years. Part of it is certainly the responsibility of ourselves in terms of delays in our own processes. But the bottom line is, for the most part, I think we've been able to turn this ship around quite specifically this year. And there's been much good work done in terms of accomplishing that. And we're now in a position to go forward from strength, bottom line.
And just before we wrap up, we've had one more comment and one more last question. Thank you for continuing to invest in the project. As a member of the Sinaloa community, we hope that you are able to bring the project to fruition and stand ready to support in any way we can. Thank you, Miguel Gutierrez. And one more question. Could you please comment, Ian, could you please comment on Secretary Ebrard's speech in Acapulco and its implications re a more positive approach to mine permitting in Mexico?
Certainly, pleased to do that. Extremely positive and very direct to the industry. So there were 1,000 people assembled in the auditorium. He was relaxed, did not speak from notes. And it followed a meeting with a small number of mining execs, including Faisal Rodriguez. And he was just very specific to the state of Mexico supporting the mining industry. And his remarks were less careful than were anticipated by most of the attendees. He was very, very specific about supporting the industry and identifying projects. He was specific. Projects would be identified to be assisted by the state. And of course, we're on that list thanks to our inclusion in Plan Sinaloa, Plan Mexico. So it was palpable in the room, the positivity that everybody took from his comments. And he showed up in person and stayed for a period of time to engage with everyone in the industry. So Michael and I were there, and I took a lot from that. I got a good charge out of that, and it's helping the redoubling of my personal commitment to what we're going to do at this project. I'm excited to be in Choix today, and I'm going to stay for a period, and we're getting our heads down on planning, etc., in large part due to the breadth of the support led by Mr. Ebrard.
So before we cut this off, I just want to go back to one subject that may not have been discussed sufficiently, and that is the rebranding of Sociedad Gold as Santo Tomas Cobre, and any financing that is introduced directly into that entity. Bottom line is the prospectus that's being prepared is going to reflect a financing level that is, I'm going to say quite specifically, several times higher than our current share price in Oroco. And that's on an equivalent share of the ownership of the project. In other words, when one calculates the value of the project as it relates to Oroco's share price today versus on a financing basis at these levels versus what we're contemplating in Santo Tomas Cobre, it is substantially higher. And therefore, the question as to how this should affect the shareholders of Oroco, it's the equivalent of doing a financing in Oroco at some number substantially higher than where we are today. That's the net effect, and it should be of considerable advantage to the existing shareholders of Oroco, bottom line. And the reason is quite simple. The only yardsticks from a valuation perspective that exist with respect to Santo Tomas Cobre as the registered owner of the project is the value of the project as demonstrated in the technical reports that exist today. And I will say this, the lowest estimate of value is the one that's in the PEA, and that's 2.64 billion US. So that's what
Before.
we're working off of.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that there is no other yardstick by which the value of that company could be measured. As I said to the guys the other day, just because those people in Oroco don't know what they're buying or selling, it's got nothing to do with the value of this project, how it relates to Santo Tomas Cobre. So it's of great advantage to the Oroco shareholders that that financing succeed, or such a financing as what we're describing succeeds.
Okay. I think that's it. Thanks, Michael. Yeah.
All right,
Waldo,
thank
any
you.
last farewell
Thank
to
you all for
shareholders?
attending.
Yep.
Thank you so much. One final
you, Brett.
message. A Merry Christmas to all. It's that great day's 2 weeks away, and happy holidays and Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll be back to you very early in the new year as soon as we eliminate the elephant from the room, and that's the financing question and how quickly we can reactivate our on-site development or exploration work. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Likewise,
Merry
Merry
Christmas
Christmas.
all.